The world outside my window was still drenched in dawn's shadows when my phone buzzed. Groggy and disoriented, I nearly ignored it, but something made me reach for it. The screen showed Robert Allen, CPA. Odd, Robert never called this early. Ben, he said, voice taut with urgency. We need to talk. Now. A knot of unease coiled in my stomach. Robert was usually calm and professional, unshaken by tax season or financial chaos. This was different. What's going on? I asked, sitting up. There's been significant activity on your accounts. Withdrawals, large ones, and they don't make sense. If this continues, you'll be bankrupt in 6 months. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Bankrupt? Robert, there must be a mistake. Jessica and I review our expenses every quarter. Everything's accounted for. Ben, Robert interrupted, his tone softer but no less serious. I triple-checked. These withdrawals aren't ordinary, they're deliberate. You need to see this for yourself. Jessica was still asleep when I slipped out of bed and drove to Robert's office. My wife, stunning even in sleep, had always been my anchor. We'd built a life together, a life I thought was untouchable. I couldn't imagine her keeping secrets, let alone anything that could jeopardize us. But as Robert spread the documents across his desk, my confidence began to crack. Here, he said, pointing to a spreadsheet. This account. Withdrawals every 2 weeks, all for high-ticket purchases, jewelry, boutique items, overseas transfers. It's been ongoing for over a year. I stared at the numbers, my mind racing. This doesn't make sense. Jessica handles most of the shopping, but she'd never, I trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Robert leaned back, his expression grim. Ben, I think it's time you get some answers. Do you want me to dig deeper? No, my voice was firm, though my chest felt hollow. I'll handle this. Back home, Jessica greeted me with her usual warmth, wrapping her arms around my neck as if nothing was wrong. Where did you run off to so early? She asked with a playful smile. Just some last-minute errands, I lied, kissing her cheek. The gesture felt forced, like I was watching someone else play my part. For the next few days, I watched her closely. She carried on with her usual charm, hosting dinner parties, shopping with friends, and scrolling through vacation ideas for our anniversary trip. Nothing about her behavior screamed betrayal. And yet, the numbers didn't lie. I considered confronting her but hesitated. If there was an explanation, she'd have given it freely. If there wasn't, I wasn't ready to hear it. That night, as Jessica slept soundly beside me, I made the call. Ethan Daniels, the voice on the other end said, brisk and confident. Ethan, this is Ben Carson. I need your help. Ethan Daniels arrived at my office the next morning. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s with sharp eyes and a quiet intensity. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. You said this is about financial discrepancies, he asked, flipping open a leather notebook. I handed him the files Robert had given me. Yes. My wife, Jessica. I need to know where this money is going and why. Ethan studied the documents for a moment before nodding. I'll need access to her daily routine, phone records, and any locations she frequents. Is she aware of your suspicions? No, I said quickly. And I want to keep it that way. He nodded again. Discretion is my specialty, Mr. Carson. I'll get to the bottom of this. Within a week, Ethan had already uncovered unsettling details. I stared at the folder Ethan placed on my desk, its contents practically vibrating with the weight of what I was about to see. This is everything, Ethan said, his tone clinical but tinged with sympathy. I've gathered evidence that's conclusive. I hesitated before opening it. Once I saw the truth, there'd be no going back. Jessica's betrayal would no longer be a suspicion, it would be a fact. Finally, I flipped it open. The first photo was of Jessica and Marcus at a high-end jewelry store. She was holding a box, her smile dazzling as Marcus stood beside her, his hand casually resting on her lower back. "That was 2 weeks ago," Ethan said. "She purchased a diamond-studded Rolex for him. It cost nearly $25,000, paid in full using your joint account." The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavy. "A watch," I murmured, my voice bitter. "She spent $25,000 on a watch for him." "And more," Ethan said, flipping to the next photo. This one showed Jessica and Marcus at an exclusive resort, their heads close as they laughed over dinner. "She booked a suite there for 3 nights. Total bill, $12,000. Again, from your account." The folder contained receipt after receipt, spa treatments, designer clothing, dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, all paid for with my money. And then there were the photos. One showed Jessica placing the Rolex on Marcus's wrist, her expression tender. Another captured them holding hands as they strolled through a park. But the most damning of all was a candid shot from a private hotel suite. Jessica was perched on Marcus's lap, her lips on his neck as his hands roamed her back. I closed the folder abruptly, unable to look any longer. How could she do this? I muttered, more to myself than to Ethan. "I don't know her motivations, Mr. Carson," Ethan said carefully. "But it's clear this has been going on for some time. She's deeply invested in him, financially and emotionally." As Ethan laid out the timeline, I began to piece together just how long Jessica's deceit had been unfolding. "The transaction started about 14 months ago," Ethan said. "At first, they were small, dinners, gifts, nothing that would raise immediate red flags. But over time, the spending escalated. Trips, jewelry, even payments toward Marcus's debts." "Debts?" Ethan nodded. "He's been in and out of financial trouble. Jessica's been bailing him out, using your funds to keep him afloat." I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles whitening. I'd worked tirelessly to build my career, sacrificing nights, weekends, and even relationships along the way. And now, my wife, the woman I thought loved me, was funneling my hard-earned money to some leech who had nothing to offer but his charm. "What about Marcus?" I asked. "Who is he, really?" Ethan slid another sheet across the desk. "Marcus Lane. 39 years old. Unemployed but calls himself an entrepreneur. Divorced twice. No kids. Known for dating wealthy women." I scoffed bitterly. "A professional gigolo." That night, I sat alone in my study, the evidence spread out before me. Jessica was out, likely with Marcus, and the house felt impossibly quiet. I stared at the photo of her slipping the Rolex onto his wrist, her smile radiant. It was the same smile she'd given me the day we moved into this house, the day we said our vows. My mind raced through the years we'd spent together, the milestones we'd celebrated. Every memory now felt tainted, every gesture suspect. Was she ever truly mine, or had I been a stepping stone in her climb toward luxury? I reached for the glass of whiskey on the desk, my hand trembling. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was an attack on everything I'd built. My career, my reputation, my trust. She had taken it all for granted, spending my money like it was limitless, lavishing it on a man who didn't deserve her, or me. The next morning, I called Robert. "I need you to freeze all joint accounts," I said. "Ben, are you sure?" "Positive. I'll set up new accounts for myself. Jessica can't access another dime." As I hung up, I felt a grim satisfaction. It was a small step, but it was something. Jessica had treated my finances like a bottomless well, and it was time to turn off the tap. When Jessica returned home later that evening, her expression was as serene as ever. She kissed me on the cheek and asked about my day, completely unaware that her carefully curated world was beginning to crumble. I played along, masking my anger behind a facade of calm. I needed time to plan my next move, to ensure that when the truth came out, it wouldn't just be a confrontation, it would be a reckoning. Ethan's final report arrived 2 days later. It included one last photo, one that hit harder than any of the others. It was a candid shot of Jessica and Marcus at a private beach, their bodies entwined as the sun set behind them. "She's all in," Ethan said when we met to discuss the findings. "There's no doubt about it. She's chosen him." I nodded, my jaw clenched. "And now she'll face the consequences." Ethan handed me a USB drive containing every piece of evidence. "Whatever you decide to do, you have everything you need here." "Thanks, Ethan," I said, shaking his hand. "I'll take it from here." As he left, I sat back in my chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I'd built a life I was proud of, a life I thought I was sharing with someone who valued it as much as I did. But Jessica had turned it into a lie. Now, it was time to expose the truth. The idea came to me during a sleepless night, the evidence spread across my desk like a grotesque mosaic of betrayal. Jessica's deceit wasn't just a private wound, it was an insult to everything I'd built. My books had made me a household name. I had a platform, and now, I realized, I had the perfect way to use it. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my story, the truth. The next morning, I called Ethan. "I need your help with one final thing," I said. "Anything," he replied without hesitation. I explained my plan, to use my upcoming appearance on the Spotlight, a nationally syndicated podcast, as the platform for my reveal. The podcast was renowned for its in-depth interviews with influential figures, and I'd been invited months ago to discuss my latest bestseller. But this wasn't going to be a typical literary chat. "I need you to organize everything, photos, receipts, messages, into a presentation that's undeniable," I told Ethan. "It has to be airtight." Ethan's voice carried a hint of hesitation. "Are you sure you want to do this publicly, Ben? This will be explosive." "That's the point," I said firmly. "She humiliated me in private, but I want the world to see the truth. This isn't just for me, it's for everyone who's been lied to, betrayed, and left in the dark." Over the next week, Ethan worked tirelessly, assembling the evidence into a comprehensive package. Every photo was time-stamped. Every receipt cross-referenced. Every message between Jessica and Marcus meticulously organized. Meanwhile, I reached out to Lisa Bennett, the host of the Spotlight. Lisa had always been a fan of my work, and I trusted her to handle what I was planning with the professionalism it deserved. "Lisa," I said during our call, "I'd like to take our interview in a different direction." "Different how?" she asked, intrigued. "There's a personal story I need to share. It's raw, it's emotional, and it's going to shock a lot of people. But it's the truth." Lisa was silent for a moment. "Ben, this isn't just about promoting your book, is it?" "No," I admitted. "It's about setting the record straight. And I need your help to do it." Jessica remained oblivious as the day of the interview approached. She continued her routines, her charm as effortless as ever. I played along, biding my time, each interaction sharpening my resolve. The night before the interview, we had dinner together. Jessica laughed and chatted about her day, completely unaware of the storm brewing. "I'm so proud of you, Ben," she said, raising her wine glass. "Your work is changing lives." I stared at her, my smile carefully controlled. "Thanks, Jess. I couldn't have done it without your support." The irony of my words wasn't lost on me. Jessica's hand rested on my shoulder as we entered the studio, her face a perfect mask of supportive pride. She greeted the crew with her trademark warmth, her smile as radiant as ever. "Are you ready for your big moment?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "I've never been more ready," I replied, forcing a smile. She had no idea what was coming. The set of the Spotlight was alive with energy. The host, Lisa Bennett, radiated charm as she introduced me to the audience. Jessica sat just off camera, poised and elegant, playing the role of the supportive wife to perfection. "Today, we're joined by best-selling author Ben Carson," Lisa began, her voice bright and engaging. "Ben, your latest book is already a hit. But I understand you wanted to share something more personal with us today." I nodded, my heart pounding. "That's right, Lisa. While my book has been making waves, I've been navigating a storm of my own, a deeply personal one." Lisa's brows knitted with intrigue. "A storm? Care to elaborate?" I glanced briefly at Jessica, whose serene expression flickered with curiosity. Then, I turned back to Lisa. "This is a story of trust, love, and betrayal," I said. "And it starts with the person I thought I knew better than anyone, my wife." Lisa's eyes widened slightly, and a ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Jessica shifted in her seat, her composure faltering for the first time. "Jessica Carson," I continued, gesturing to her, "has been my partner for 6 years. She's been by my side through the highs and lows of my career, or so I thought." I motioned to the screen behind us, where Ethan cued the first photo, Jessica and Marcus at the jewelry store. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is Jessica buying a $25,000 watch. Not for me, but for someone else, a man named Marcus Lane." Gasps erupted from the audience. Jessica shot to her feet, her face a mask of panic. "Ben, what is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I ignored her, pressing forward. "But that's just the beginning," I said, as the next photo appeared, Jessica and Marcus at the resort. "This is them on a weekend getaway, paid for with money siphoned from our accounts. Money I thought was being used to support our home, our life together." "Stop!" Jessica's voice rang out, trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "This is insane, Ben. What are you doing?" Lisa held up a hand, signaling for the cameras to keep rolling. "Jessica, would you like to respond?" she asked, her tone measured. Jessica whirled toward me, her mask of poise completely shattered. "You're humiliating me. This isn't the place for this." "No," I said, my voice rising. "The place for this was in our home, where we could have been honest with each other. But you chose secrecy. You chose to betray me, and now, the truth is coming out." The next slide appeared, the intimate photo of Jessica and Marcus in the hotel suite. The audience fell silent, the tension in the room almost suffocating. Jessica's face drained of color as she stared at the screen. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Marcus Lane," I said, turning to address the audience, "is a man who preys on women like Jessica, women with access to wealth and influence. And Jessica, well, she fell for it, dragging me and everything I've built into her deception." "Ben, please," Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. I turned to her, meeting her gaze with a calm intensity. "You made your choices, Jessica. And now, the world knows the truth." Lisa finally broke the silence, her professionalism barely masking her shock. "Ben, this is unprecedented. Do you think this public revelation was necessary?" "Absolutely," I replied. "Betrayal thrives in darkness. By bringing it into the light, I'm not just reclaiming my own story, I'm giving a voice to everyone who's ever been blindsided by someone they trusted." The audience erupted into applause, their sympathy palpable. Jessica, meanwhile, sank back into her seat, her composure in tatters. For once, she had no clever words, no disarming smile to deflect the reality bearing down on her. As the interview wrapped up, Lisa turned to Jessica. "Jessica, do you have anything you'd like to say?" Jessica glanced at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice breaking. "You've turned my life into a spectacle." "No, Jessica," I said, my tone cold. "You did that the moment you decided to betray me." The studio audience murmured in agreement, their judgment clear. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, Jessica stormed toward me, her face a mix of rage and desperation. "How could you do this to me?" she hissed. I met her fury with unshakable calm. "How could you do this to us?" Before she could respond, security escorted her out, leaving me alone in the studio, the weight of the moment settling over me. I had exposed the truth, and there was no turning back. The world now knew who Jessica Carson truly was, and so did I. The interview's fallout was immediate and brutal. By the time I returned home, the segment had gone viral. Headlines splashed across social media: author Ben Carson exposes wife's infidelity on national podcast. Comments poured in, some sympathetic, others gleefully tearing Jessica apart. Jessica's phone blew up with calls and messages. I didn't need to eavesdrop to know she was scrambling for damage control. The calm, poised woman I had once adored was gone, replaced by someone desperate and panicked. The next morning, Ethan forwarded me a link to a video. Marcus had given a brief, self-serving interview to a local tabloid. "I had no idea Jessica was married," he claimed, his expression a mask of faux regret. "I feel terrible for what happened, but I've cut all ties with her. I can't be associated with this kind of scandal." I couldn't help but laugh. The man who had happily drained my bank account was now throwing Jessica under the bus to save himself. When Jessica saw the video, she smashed her phone against the wall, her screams echoing through the house. 2 days later, Jessica returned from a day of frantic errands to find her key no longer worked. When she called me, her voice shaking, I calmly explained that the house was in my name and the locks had been changed. "You can stay at the apartment you've been renting for your escapades," I said, my tone laced with venom. "Oh, wait. I had the lease terminated." "Ben, please," she begged. "We can talk about this." "There's nothing left to talk about, Jessica. My lawyer will be in touch." The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Armed with Ethan's evidence, my lawyer ensured that Jessica had no claim to any part of my fortune. Her spending habits, combined with the public nature of her betrayal, made her case weak. Jessica's pleas for leniency fell on deaf ears. Marcus had vanished, her friends distanced themselves, and even her family seemed reluctant to take her side. By the time the divorce was finalized, Jessica was left with nothing but the clothes she'd packed and a tarnished reputation. The silence that followed was both liberating and overwhelming. For years, my life had been entwined with Jessica's. Now, I had to rediscover who I was without her. I poured myself into writing, channeling every ounce of pain and betrayal into a memoir. Shattered Vows became my most personal work, a raw, unflinching look at love, loss, and resilience. To my surprise, the book resonated with readers in ways I hadn't anticipated. Letters poured in from people who had faced their own betrayals, thanking me for giving voice to their pain. With each passing day, I felt lighter. I sold the house Jessica had decorated and moved into a sleek downtown loft. It was smaller, quieter, and entirely mine. I began reconnecting with old friends, people I'd unintentionally drifted away from during my marriage. I even started traveling again, revisiting places I'd always loved but had stopped exploring. The freedom was intoxicating. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my loft, watching the city lights twinkle, I reflected on everything that had happened. Jessica's betrayal had gutted me, but it hadn't broken me. If anything, it had forced me to confront truths I'd been ignoring, about trust, about love, and about the importance of maintaining my own identity. I no longer feared relationships, but I knew I'd never let blind trust govern my heart again. When Shattered Vows hit the bestseller list, I was invited back to the spotlight. Lisa greeted me warmly, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Ben, the last time you were here, you shared a deeply personal story. How do you feel now, looking back?" I smiled, the weight of the past finally lifted. "I feel grateful," I said. "Not for the betrayal, but for the clarity it brought." It's easy to let others define your story, but the truth is, we all have the power to reclaim it. The audience erupted into applause, their support palpable. As I left the studio that day, I felt truly free. Jessica's chapter in my life was over, and a new one had begun, one that I would write on my own terms.